Welcome to this special episode of Decoding Gender Insights from Thought Leaders. Population First is observing the 16 days of activism against gender based violence, a global campaign from November 25th to December 10th, with a 16-part podcast series that delves into the intersection of gender and critical social issues. Since inception in 2005, Population First has focused on challenging the gendered attitudes that devalue girls and women, fuel discrimination, and perpetuate gender based violence. Indian cinema has long mirrored societal norms, often reinforcing gender stereotypes. While women were once confined to traditional roles, some films have bucked the trend to highlight women's empowerment and challenge patriarchy. However, objectification, underrepresentation, and a gender pay gap remain issues. Joining us today are two experts, Ladli awardee Sharat Kataria, who has made films like Dam Laga Ke Haisha, and film critic and journalist Nandini Ramnath, who has often highlighted the problematic gender portrayals in cinema. Now, over to our experts.
Should I put on my usual interviewer hat?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a conversation, not an interview, I think.
Yeah, I know. So over to you.
Mm, You know, uh, when I wrote Dam Laga Ke Aisha, there was nothing in my mind that it's going to be known as a film which talks about a strong, independent women, because I don't know the other way to write. And the second thing, it was known as a film which became a subgenre like a small town film. That time, even that was neither in my head that, oh, it'll be known as that. So yeah, but that's where we are.
Yeah, I remember when I saw the film at the time, I'd interviewed you also, and what you just talked about, it was interesting that there were quite a few films that were followed Dam Laga Ke Haisha, which were looking at certain social concerns, whatever they may be, personal aspirations, striving, body positivity in one sense, as Dam Laga Ke Haisha also explores, individual choice, identity, and so on. Why were so many of these playing out in small towns? Was it felt that in big cities people have so much more freedom anyway, and the small town, the so-called small town of the filmmaker's imagination has to be the kind of battleground for these kind of ideas?
But I would say small towns, I think, are more receptive towards overweight girls. It's actually more of a challenge in big cities. That is why you see gym memberships, this, that, and all kinds of things available to people to. But also, second thing, in when I wrote it, she just happened to be overweight.
Yeah.
That was never the intention that we are going to be the flag bearers of women who are overweight and who are fat shamed and all of that. But the big thing in my head was the complexity around a working woman in a house where the man of the house is almost good for nothing. And the yeah, complex doubled up because the woman at the same time, not she was not just feisty, and she would speak her mind, and also she was more educated. She was going to get a job. This is the when you write it, it was very clear what was the man's aspiration. Man's aspiration was to get married to a beautiful girl. But what was the woman's aspiration? Woman's aspiration was to get a job in a and become a teacher and be an independent woman. So that was what was more complicated in terms of that relationship. That yeah, one day she will be financially independent, and how would a man deal with that is was the question. And hence the small town, because that would be a bigger issue in a small town than the beauty aspect of it, I feel.
What do you, as a filmmaker, make of these general small town films? I'm saying generally now, not just your own film. There's been a whole bunch of them after Dam Laga Ke, around the time of and after.
Not really a fan of them. Not really a fan of them. Apart from Aankho Dekhi, I don't think Any film has left an impression. And of course, Aankho Dekhi was before Dum Lага Ke Isha. And
And
it was
Delhi, yeah,
a small town film. It was Delhi based,
yeah,
but not really a fan of those films because what I find lacking is empathy in those films, and seen more as a character sketch of how
yeah,
people in small towns are.
yeah. I feel some of these films just treat. First of all, there's that dysfunctional family, which has now become everyone's
It's
favorite,
very boring. It's very boring.
and
Mm.
it's very overdone. It's caricatured, and there has to be some annoying chachi and some chacha with a digestive problem, and some crazy grandmother
But
or
it never
grandfather.
worked even in 80s, for when we were growing up, even then it didn't work as in movies. Yeah.
Yeah,
So not really. Yes, a lot of times people call me to direct something and say, we have something which is up your alley. The word is up your alley. And is it small town? And they're very excited. Yes. And I said, no, not really interested. Sorry. So yeah, well, one never thought that. I never thought that I'm writing a film in a small town. It just happened to be. How we reached Haridwar was also a very weird story because because the film was set in Agra when I wrote it, but then there were complications of shooting in Agra that time. So we thought, okay, let's. So then for the exterior locations, we had an idea of what kind of roads we wanted. And when we Google mapped the entire country, we found that those roads are available in Haridwar and Rishikesh.
yeah,
And unfortunately, when we went there to shoot, we never shot on those roads. But we liked the place so much that we ended up shooting there, and it helped us in creating the period because it didn't look like those parts of the town really moved on. So it was easy to cheat the period of 90s. So yeah, and the major thing was the casting of the woman, which was uh, I'll be honest, I was not very happy with Bhumi's casting in the beginning because the thing was that I was getting an opportunity to make a film with Yash Raj Film, big banner. They have access to all the big movie stars. So when I told Aditya Chopra that when I was asked who do you want as, so I said maybe Deepika or Pariniti, and he says, but how will they become overweight? I said, but that prosthetics and all that can do the job. He says, "You're killing your own film by doing that." It was his statement, and I was like, "Okay." So then he says that I think you should get a person who is overweight instead of making an artificial
yeah,
character,
yeah,
and which worked for the film. Which worked for the film. Yeah. So and yeah, but I felt really sorry for her when she was asked to eat more and more, and so that the
yeah,
weight will go down, because we were all wondering how will she lose all this weight, because if she really wants to be a movie, because not all characters would be like this is one character. After that, different characters, different films, they have different demands. So but she managed, So,
yeah. I mean, I actually be more curious to know what filmmakers do. Filmmakers see a difference in the way women review films and men review films. Meaning, if a film doesn't have an overt kind of gender aspect to it, meaning it is something that is like it's not so overtly sexist that everybody is going to point it out, or it is not so overtly feminist that that maybe a woman might be more sensitive to it than a man. I'm honestly curious about what men have to think about this. Uh, I also have not I've not been around like that long to because when I started reviewing, there were already a fair amount of women. Yeah, definitely there are more women now. Um,
there are more bloggers now than reviewers.
yeah, there are in fact just a lot more. I think more than a gender identity skew. There's like a age skew. So there are a lot of very young people who are essentially influencers. More than bloggers, they're influencers, right?
Yeah,
In the old days, they used to be bloggers. Now they're influencers.
uh,
Most of them are being paid to be enthusiastic about films at the press show, at the special preview, where critics watch films before the general public. They sort of express their enthusiasm for a film, which is presumably not organic, but is
but how do you deal with it? Because
you, yeah. I mean,
Because reviews, there is no excitement of reading reviews anymore.
look, I don't know. I mean, this whole I think for me right now, I think a lot of people are already being quite sensitive to this aspect of looking at a film a little, with more than just one lens of will it run or will it not run, right? That's the
Yeah.
standard phrase that you hear in the industry. Chalegi ki nahi. I think critics are a little more discerning, whether they are men or women. If the film is overtly obnoxious, sexist, they will laugh off an item song, but they are not going to be dumb. They are not so stupid that they are not going to know what's going on. And, they will presumably kind of address it in different language. I mean, somebody like me will say that's a sexist scene. Some of them may say the film has too many commercial elements. Who knows? I'm just saying that there are various ways to express disapproval.
I have one.
Strong word.
I have one thing to ask you. Sorry, because
Yeah,
we never get an opportunity to speak the other way around. So like a lot of times, there are some reviews which are more driven by the checklist of agendas, and if the agendas are in alignment with the reviewer, then whether actual aspects of filmmaking are ignored, and you get. You are to the film is good because it covers or it checklists
definitely.
all, which is
There is
also
a positive
equally.
bias, what we call a positive bias.
Okay.
No, in fact, that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at the fact that there's always been a moral panic about cinema. I think right from the beginning of this film industry it came about in this country, right?
Yeah.
If you just look at some of the memoirs or writings of the early silent movie stars and all, and if you go back to the film Indias of the time and you read about how they were written about, there was always a whiff of scandal attached to the entertainer,
Mm.
particularly the woman, right? The woman in the
Mm.
public space, being in films, acting across strange men who are not her husband. Um, so I think this moral panic about cinema in general, the film industry particularly, has been around, frankly, since the beginning of the movies itself.
Mm.
I don't think Hollywood also had a bit of that problem, but we have always had a very acute problem of moralizing about people who entertain for a living. We've had it in the arts, we've had it in the folk
Mm.
arts, performing arts.
Mm.
We've definitely had it in the movies. There's always been a very unsavory aspect about being in cinema, partly because of the way it's funded, all the cash sloshing around, and so on and so forth. So I think in order to counter that, there's
Mm.
always been a kind of moral lens through which movies have been reviewed, frankly, right from the beginning. If again you go to the National Film Archive of India and you just pick up any publication from the 50s or whatever, there is always a sort of slightly headmaster type,
Huh.
oh, this is vulgar. Now, I also have been very guilty of it, of looking at things sort of through this lens of moral panic, a moral judgment. And now I hope I'm a little more, I've developed a bit more nuance towards whose vulgarity are you talking about, right? What is vulgar to you may not be vulgar to me. But yeah, I think the fact that we have a censor board, we still call it the censor board, even the official name is Central Board of Film Certification. The comments that they make when deleting scenes, all the writings that have been there about so-called vulgarity in cinema. I think there has always been a moral panic about the movies. And therefore, film critics have also always had to be a little aware of, is this film sort of good for people or not? And good means is it morally okay? So yeah, I
Mm.
think there to complete to answer your question in a very long-winded way, Sharad, therefore then some people go to the other extreme and say the film must definitely tick off these criteria if it is, tick off these check boxes if it is meant to be seen as a quote unquote good film. Now,
Mm.
a good film is a moral film. That is a very slippery kind of, it's very
Yeah.
dicey territory.
I haven't read anything from you
Okay.
in that
No,
way.
like I think Animal was a great example. Animal is a film that, I mean, honestly, like some parts of it just threw me off as a watcher,
Mm.
right? Now, Animal is a film which I think is kind of designed to provoke. It's a
Yeah.
deliberately provocative film.
Mm.
There are some bits in it which are quite cinematically interesting, actually. But then there is a very clear politics at work in the film. There's a very clear kind of unreconstructed alpha male who Sandeep Reddy Vanga who loves to shove down your throats. So now you can approach the film from different directions, but There are films like that which I think just are designed to
Hmm.
annoy people. Then
You
there are
know,
other slightly more complicated films like KGF or Pushpa, which are supposedly valorizing the mother, but then
hmm,
they have these item songs, and the rest of the women are treated like
hmm,
nothing.
hmm,
So yeah, I think it's very difficult to not judge, to not let your agendas come through, because
hmm.
some of the films don't even have that cinematic quality. How often do you find a hardcore commercial film that has a screenplay worth talking about? Right?
Yeah. Hmm,
How often do you say, okay, this shot taking was wonderful in this scene? There's
hmm,
editing rhythm to this movie. So I
hmm.
think in the absence of all that, people just attack the content of the film, which
Yeah.
if it turns out to
It,
be problematic, you just tear that film down for that reason.
it ends up becoming more about the story than about the film.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I saw The Substance last night, uh,
Now,
2 days back,
on movie, yeah.
which I really,
I saw
really,
it, yeah.
which I really, really liked.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I don't know why I liked it, but yeah, after a long time, there was a film that I sat for 2.5 hours and I didn't move while watching it. And
I
of
don't
course,
know. I mean, my own personal favorite, like not favorite is a strong word, but my own films that I like about women, meaning they're specifically about womanhood. There's a difference,
mm,
I think, between films that are about women and
mm,
about womanhood, you know.
mm,
And the womanhood films are the films that are exploring what we call feminist themes.
mm,
Like for me, Bhumika, Sham Benigar's Bhumika is for me one of the greatest Indian films made. It's also one of the greatest portraits of an actor anywhere, I think,
yeah, yeah,
navigating. And it's a beautiful open-ended film. I like it very much because it is open-ended. It
mm,
begins in the middle of nowhere, it ends in the middle of nowhere. There is no proper cradle to present structure to it.
mm,
This woman makes a lot of mistakes.
mm.
And the film allows her to make these mistakes and does not judge her for it and leaves it. It is just part of her decision making.
But there are very few films where you get to, and I'm talking as a man here, that there are few films which make you understand women better. I don't know whether they're feminist films or not, but the point of view, like two films that have made an impression. There is a film, Worst Person of the Year or something.
First person in the world.
First person in the world, yeah, which you get to understand them better without any strong statement made in caps. You just understand what the person is going through, and oh, this is because she is particularly a woman, that's why these things,
Right.
you have empathy, you feel for them. When there was a film called Get, Israeli of
Yeah, yeah. Get the trial of Vivian Absalom.
yeah. I don't know.
Wonderful film. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, for people who are watching this, it's basically part of a trilogy made by
Oh,
these siblings who tragically, the actress is fantastic actress. She died recently of cancer.
oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, Ronit Elizabeth, I think that's her name. I'm
Yeah,
maybe getting the name wrong.
yeah. You get.
Uh, but it's essentially part of a trilogy of films about this woman from an extremely Orthodox Jewish family in Israel who's trying to get a divorce from her husband.
Mm,
And her husband has to give her permission to be divorced from him, like with certain religions in the world. And he just believes in harassing her. He's harassing her essentially.
it's
And
his ego. It's his ego that is at play.
yeah, and this film, so this is the last sort of the trilogy, the last bit where she finally enters the courtroom, where of course she confronts a whole bunch of male judges. So yeah, I think these films are specific. They are about issues, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I
What
don't think really too much about the audience. Honestly, as an audience, I think when I am the audience, I'm only thinking about me watching the film, whether it's working or not. When you're a filmmaker, then you actually again are with the same aspect that it should work for me as a viewer, not others. It's your good luck whether you get the audience love or not. So. So now and they are the same. They are the same. The yeah the ga- yeah the character. It is just that the character changes, but whether it's a man or woman doesn't matter, and the film nuance is also the same. So
For
mm,
instance, Manikarnika, there have been films previously on the Rani of Jhansi. One of the best films was made by Saurabh Modi, which is a great biopic, called Rani of Jhansi. It's a lovely film. So yeah, picking women from history, historical
mm,
sort of significant women who and that's a no-brainer. It's If you're going to give me a complex portrayal within that, like what Shekhar Kapoor did with Elizabeth, which is I really like that film because she is again a very complex figure, very much reacting to historical events around her and kind of making her own decisions. Now, I am. It's nice for me, perhaps as an audience member, to learn that there was this amazing woman who did this amazing thing in so and so century. But I am honestly more interested in knowing how she did it. How did she navigate a room full of men? How did
Yeah,
the men respond to her? Now that is human experience. That is a human dynamic at work, which is always more interesting than here's this amazing woman. I can read about her in Amar Chitrakatha. I can pick up a biography of her, a bio, like a read a book on her.
mm,
If you're putting it in the movies, are you going really beyond that and saying something that is more interesting than just, she was brave or she did this?
I
Also, I
agree.
think a lot of these historicals, particularly, or films about significant women, tend to really trap the women into service. Like we have films about social workers. A very bad example is a Sindhutai Sakpal film. Sapkal, sorry. About this woman who adopted a whole bunch of people. That's the only side of her you really get to see. You don't have any idea of who this person is beyond constantly serving other people. Whereas there was an interesting Marathi biopic called Anandi Gopal about the second woman to ever earn a medical degree in India, Anandibai Joshi, Maharashtrian woman. Her husband was a completely eccentric character who beat her up and made her study. Like she didn't want to study. He was a Brahmin and he converted to Christianity in order to enable her to study. It's a crazy story. It's a very interesting movie because she is heroic. Her husband's heroic in a very perverse way. And they're both really reacting to this extremely orthodox times. So the film isn't entirely successful, but for me, that is a more interesting biopic than just seeing a straightforward, amazing Anandi Bai woke up one morning, went to become a doctor, and did whatever she did. So I think as women, or as men or as viewers, coming back to what you were saying, Sharad, when I'm watching a movie, I personally like whatever you want to call it, layers, complexity, some thinking, aesthetics, of course. If all of that is there, then for me, it's really a complete film
Yeah.
experience, which is why I come back to Bhumika,
Mm.
because for me,
I,
it gives me all of this.
I would digress because the thing we were talking about. One thing that I have learned myself very late in life is, like how when we are writing women characters and to be conscious and like while writing Damla Ke Isha, various arguments were about the man slapping the woman and all of that. We should not have that or to have that. All of those things were going on, but then my defense was that time ki, oh, but this is how it is. But one of my team members, he used to ask me, but that is not the reason to be for it to be in a film, which I'm still learning how to deal with. This is how it is versus this is a choice that I am making. It's a struggle to write, and it's to get the most sincere and most true portrayal of a character. It's and with a lot of empathy and fun at the same time. So all I
Yeah, I would
can.
just like to say that, I think women filmmakers, actors, viewers, all of us need and deserve and sometimes are rewarded with complexity. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
I think that is the best way to deal with this kind of field, as it were. You look at it with complexity and then you get a lot of interesting ideas to work.
Thank you, Sharat Kataria and Nandini Ramnath, for the insightful and thought provoking conversations on gender and cinema. Viewers may share their reactions, queries, and observations in the comments section below. Please watch all the episodes and initiate gender conversations with your family, friends, colleagues, and community members.